Hey, good afternoon. We're going to get started. Are we closing the day?
Yes.
Come on, we need some energy to close the day out.
So we're between you and happy hour. Okay. Perfect.
All right, we get it. Happy hour, sunshine, all that stuff. Welcome, and it's great to be part of this education session that we're doing, streaming for those of you who are not here, and for those of you who are here, doing a live session is super exciting. It's been too long. And as tough as this pandemic has been, we've been really privileged enough to work with some very innovative courts throughout the country, and we really look forward to sharing some of their experiences with you as we focus on keeping the doors of your courts open with virtual court initiatives. If you want to stay connected via some social, we've got some links here, # Virtual Court Solutions, and obviously we want to stay in touch with you here and follow-ups for those of you who are not here today. It's my pleasure to introduce one of our partners, Ryan Crowley with Pioneer Technology. He's got years and years of experience. I say that as I'm standing here with the gray hair. But really, he's been really growing the initiatives at Pioneer, continues to grow them in the virtual court initiative.
I just cut my gray hair off, MJ, so don't feel too bad about that. Yeah, and also the privilege to introduce someone that MJ Cartwright, and I just consider her to be one of the really the leaders in this space. The person that I had always gone to even before we were partners when I started thinking about and talking about access to justice. So, MJ's grown Matterhorn over the years to 150 different installations, 23 different states, and just always has really good ideas, and is very believes in the mission, right? So it's not just a business for MJ. If you've ever spoken to MJ about this subject, you know that she is passionate about it, and that's really cool to work with. So. All right. So here's what we're going to look at today. We do want this to be a conversation, right? So I know we're all kind of spread out, and we've got plenty of people at home watching the stream. So we'll check in on the chat, but we do want you involved. We've got some time at the end for Q&A. So last session of the day, the energy MJ was talking about. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to get involved. We want you to be a part of this. So we're gonna look at what it means to keep the doors of the court open. We want to look at what some of the courts have done already, what some of the experiences have been this year with the courts, and then we'll kind of get to some Q&A with you all. So let's talk about some of the barriers. And when I was looking at the barriers to justice, the 4, and it's really now 5, I had to put my pre-COVID hat on, which if you all can remember what it was like pre-COVID. Some of the barriers that we used to deal with before, just operational barriers. I don't have enough staff to do this. I don't have enough funding to do this. Physical barriers. Some people can't get to the courthouse. They just can't get there to be there physically in person, right? Those were some of the old barriers that we dealt with.
And still do.
And still do, yes. Those did not go away, by the way, just because we got an extra one. Good point. Financial barriers, not being able to pay for court costs, not being able to get out of work. You got an hourly job and you can't get out of work. You can't be in court, and then all of a sudden you end up in this spiral that we're trying to improve with access to justice. And then, of course, psychological barriers. And those come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. We saw a lot of that this year also, where people just don't feel that people are not getting proper access to justice, and it's really unequal, and that came out a lot this year in the country. So those are the barriers that we've dealt with over the years and have continued to deal with. And then this happened, and then the world closed. So, this was just something that nobody could have seen coming. Some courts were.
I thought the video started.
I was like, this room is really echoing.
No problem.
All good. And then we, of course, got hit with COVID, and it shut everything down. So we want to kind of look at how courts overcame that. Some courts were ready for it, some were not. I think everyone would agree that everyone is more ready for the next thing that we don't expect, the next black swan now. All right, so let's talk about virtual court. Not all virtual is in the future. What do we mean by that? A lot of that is here now with a lot of what courts are doing now. Many courts were just forced into this world of virtual court, as we'll call it, because of what went on with the pandemic. My view, and really our view, well, I'll say my view, MJ, you have your own view on virtual court, is there's really no one size fits all. And that is one of the takeaways that I've had after this year of interacting with a lot of different courts, is that it's different for every court. Some courts have multiple judges, and some judges like to do things one way, some want to do it another way. You know, some courts experimented with virtual proceedings, virtual juries, some didn't. Some liked it and want to keep it, some wonder if that's the right way to go forward. So we're going to take a look at the life cycle of a case and really step through what we've seen with our courts through this year and some of the innovations that they've adopted.
Yeah, so when we look at a life cycle, we actually back it all the way to how can you avoid even going into court, all right? We view that as actually the beginning. And can you avert a case in the court? Then how do you initiate a case in the court, or how do others within the court or law enforcement or prosecutors initiate cases? And then there's the resolve and decide, adjudicate the case itself, and that's done, live hearings, negotiation, mediation, online and not online, finalizing the agreements that need to be in place, closing out the cases when they're ready to be closed. And then finally, for those cases that you don't close out right away, ones that are domestic or family relations that go on until the children are 18, or you're dealing with payment plans, the payment plans have to be completed before you close out the cases. So these are the types of things in the life cycle that we see again and again in different versions of it, as Ryan said. All these courts that we work with really innovative in how they've done some of the implementation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you avert a case using mediation, negotiation, and I'm going to actually take you into one of our courts that we've been working with, and they have a pilot implementation that's running in Hamilton County, Tennessee, and this is for medical debt cases. It's all pre-filing. And so instead of filing a case with the court and the AOC in Tennessee really wanted cases to be submitted through an online platform and then invite the debtors into the case itself. And so this is all pre-filing, how to avoid going to court and resolving your case if you can. And, online, the parties initiate the case. That they can initiate agreements. They can work through a mediator to initiate those agreements if they need to escalate it. And if it goes beyond the asynchronous back and forth, which is how the online dispute resolution typically works, you can also have a synchronized communication as well as an escalation if it's going to help you close out an outstanding issue with the court, or if you really need to do that synchronized communication. Then the other aspect for the final agreement is being able to have the appropriate parties review, sign, share, and access of the agreements, and all of this can be done without having to go to court. And I think the next slide here is going to take you into what the AOC in Tennessee, along with the court and the judges and other agencies, put together an educational video. And this is a great video, I think, and what they've put together. And so I'm going to play it right now, if we have it set up right.
Medical debt cases are often challenging and stressful, and that is why we are proud to announce a new program designed to give patients and healthcare providers an opportunity to discuss a bill before a lawsuit is filed. We will even provide you with a free mediator who will serve as a neutral party to hopefully help you come to an agreement outside of the court system. This new online dispute resolution program is innovative, and we are proud to be the first court in the state and one of the first in the country to use this program.
If you are notified that you have been selected to participate in this pretrial online dispute resolution, please understand that you are not being sued, and a case has not been brought against you in General Sessions Court. This is a program that's designed to give you and the healthcare provider an opportunity to discuss, negotiate, and possibly agree on some deal to resolve a medical bill. And best of all, it's completely free, voluntary, and confidential. If you choose to try online dispute resolution, we hope you'll have a positive experience.
I'm from Legal Aid of East Tennessee. If you're receiving letters and phone calls about a medical debt, it's important that you develop a response before you potentially face negative entries on your credit report and a lawsuit. Dispute resolution is a process where two parties, here you and a creditor, the hospital, ask a third neutral party, a mediator in this case, to assist in discussions and a negotiation. It's voluntary and provides you an opportunity to ask questions about and possibly negotiate and settle your medical bills. This program is free and you don't need a lawyer to participate. If you do have legal needs, Legal Aid of East Tennessee may be able to help.
Mediators are trained to help people find a common ground, work through differences so that they may develop an agreed upon settlement. This program will be online. We have created special online conversation space for the parties and mediator to communicate and have an opportunity to develop an agreement that works for both of them. To get started, you need to register by setting up a username and password. You will then be able to leave your first message. From there, negotiations will begin. No one will be forced to make an agreement. It is my obligation as a mediator to respect and to honor both sides' self-determination. In the event that you come to an agreement, I will assist you in capturing your agreements in writing. I am what's called a settlement agreement that you can sign off online. The beauty of mediation is that you can possibly resolve your issue by the end of mediation and you will be done.
So I thought they did a really nice job in pulling this together, and this is on their website, so it's really for their public to better understand this process. Then as we continue in the life cycle into initiating, so if we need to file a case in court, how do you go and do that?
All right, so let's talk about case initiation. So this is where kind of the CMS comes into play. So if we weren't able to avert the case, and it's going to happen, it needs to be filed in the CMS. So obviously several different ways to do that. Just out of curiosity, we've got about 28 people in the room. How many people have some form of required e-filing in their state? Okay, so most. Okay, imagine this pandemic, I don't know, 10 years ago, where that number of hands went up would have been much less. It was probably about 90% of the room in here. So obviously, case initiation, e-filing. So that could be through an e-filing portal. You know, many states have a statewide portal. Whether your CMS system has an e-filing component to it, they can file through that. Obviously, you can also do case initiation through some of our partners like Matterhorn and other. That case gets filed into the case management system, and presumably the CMS would have some ability to view that case, view images. The person would upload their images into the case management system, and that's all, again, done electronically, done virtually. We had a lot of courts tell us that really going through this year with the CMS and with partners like Matterhorn really made it possible, where they were able to keep up with their case flow, because as you do that e-file and you're uploading that document, the whole case is really electronic, so they can do their work remote and from home. So let's go ahead and look at the next one here. Some of the highlights of that, because you've got an electronic case, all the stakeholders can get access to that case. So whether we're talking about the attorneys viewing documents, the judges signing documents, the defendant or other parties in the case viewing or uploading additional documents with it. The case management system that our customers are using has the ability to do calendaring, forms creation, scheduling, document creation, searching, of course, all from the web. So they were able to, right away when they had to shift people to go home to work remotely, they really didn't miss a beat. Maybe outside of buying some laptops that they didn't have, right? Because a lot of the offices still were running PCs. I'd imagine most offices have moved to laptops or are quickly doing that or quickly did that. But again, because these cases were digital, they can now work that case remotely from home or from somewhere else. And then just one other piece of this, we've got several courts that did backscanning projects. So I'll just throw that in there because it's great. They were able to keep up with the current caseload because those were coming in electronically anyway. Well, what happens though to the last 10 years of cases if there's some of those cases that drag out for a long time? Some of those civil cases are open for quite a while and they're paper. Some of our customers actually went in and had backscanning done so that they could work those cases electronically. All right, one of the other abilities in the case management system is prioritizing the cases, right? So, some of our courts just had to make a decision that, hey, the world has changed. We can't do everything. Let's do the ones that are most important. So with the workflow engines that they had at their fingertips, they were able to prioritize those cases and say, okay, this is a DV case, or this is a child custody or a parent guardianship type case that needs immediate attention. This needs to get routed to the appropriate person. And they had the ability to do that routing through the case management system, and the judges or attorneys could work those cases again remotely. And one of the things I should mention, all of this is tied real time. So when we're talking about ODR and the filing, and we'll get into that here in a minute, but it's all back to the case management system in real time. And really that case management system is kind of the backbone of this whole process, because that's really the source of truth, as I've heard MJ refer to it. And that's true. That system needs to be real time. All those stakeholders need access to that information real time.
Yeah, and we'd like to show you some highlights. I'm a very visual learner, and I like to share with visual experiences. And one of the innovation teams that we worked with is a DeKalb County court in Georgia. And they, during the kind of the peak when their court was not open to the public to come in, they were triaging their cases, and they still are triaging their cases with online case resolution. It was their choice of words so people could understand it. And they would be initiating their cases via their mobile devices, tablets, or computers, everything being. And we really are finding that more and more people, 50 to 80% of people are really initiating via their mobile device, which is pretty exciting because it's very accessible. The other aspect that was very important for DeKalb, and I would imagine for every court, is that making sure that your public understands and acknowledges their advisements of rights. And so for the judges here, they created a lot of video creation going on, which is kind of exciting. That didn't used to happen. Created their own video, and then obviously they have it in text to be read, and there's an acknowledgement that has to be in place by the defendant in this case, going through the process. That was one thing that was very important to them. Another example of innovation, an innovative court that we are working with is here in California, up in San Joaquin. And they were triaging, and still are triaging, their cases through the ODR virtual platform. And people are utilizing the online platform to request reductions, pleas, and reschedule some of their hearing dates when they really can't meet the virtual hearing date or the real hearing date as their court opens up. And this includes a smart triage. I mean, it's really important to guide people through the process. You're not providing legal advice, but you are guiding them so that they can move forward with the process. We call it smart triage. And when they submit their requests, the right information is coming in, and they have expectations of timing and flow within the process.
Okay, back to our life cycle here. So now we're at the resolve or decide. So following the pieces that MJ just went through, we're now at resolve or decide. So, a couple things might happen. People can contest, they can plead guilty, they can plead not guilty. Maybe it's a fix-it ticket, like I just need to come in and show proof of insurance. You could tell I came up in the old school of courts. I said I need to come in and show proof of insurance. So some of us are still adapting, right? So they can upload their proof of insurance, and all real time. Online dispute resolution, things like negotiation, mediation, those types of things would all be handled through the ODR platform. And then after that decision is made, we start getting into finalizing, right? So we've got to create the form or create the report, whatever needs to be signed by both parties. And again, that can be routed to all parties really for signature, for electronic signature. And then the final part of that for finalization, it would be docketed back to the CMS system. Again, going back to that, main source of truth, that finalization would go back to the CMS system. So let's take a quick look at that here. So a couple different screens. It's all about workflows, right? It's about the ability to configure and customize your workflows. So depending on your CMS, you should be able to control your workflows and automate the ones that you want automated. Some you might want to run lights out. There might be others that you say, hey, we need 2 steps in this process. This has got to go to the prosecutor, then it's got to go to the judge. That's all determined by your individual court and your needs, and really even beyond the court. It's really by the case type and the court type there. So again, all that can be set up remote. All the screens you're seeing here, this is all remote access. This is all web-based, right? So they can generate the forms from the web. They can adjust the calendars from the web. They can access all this information from the web. Remote hearing. So this is probably a very familiar shot for most of us here, right? I don't know if some of us felt we were just tired of staring at a screen all day. I know I did. Lots of camera time. Never got in this business to be what it felt like to be on TV all day, every day, but that's about how I felt working from my office at my house, staring at my webcam all day. But support for these online hearings, right? This was needed over this pandemic time. Whether your court was doing online hearings or not, there was a lot of them that were. So, the ability to integrate this and tie this back to your CMS, and then there's other decisions to be made, like do you store that video? Do you purge the video? I'm not here to answer it, just throwing it out there, right? And then how do you plan for that go forward? Because now, guess what? You just told your IT staff we're about to store a boatload of HD video and we need a place for it, or not. But these were all some of the discussions that we had over the course of this year with the online hearings.
Yeah, and looking at some more visual examples, and I can continue with some highlights with San Joaquin, where the court, the clerk or the judicial officer initiates their interactions, and what happens is they don't have enough information. And so if they were in court, they would ask for that information. So they initiate the conversation through messaging within the environment, and then they can go back and forth, get the information uploaded, or clarify something or ask a question that they didn't understand. And all this is audited, which is great. There's an audit trail so that you can have this documented, and where it makes sense, as Ryan was saying, having these notes and information going back to the CMS to store that in the total case record, which is pretty important. And some other highlights where, when the party is making a request, what are the things that they can do online? And then depending on the severity of the case, some of the cases that are running through these online virtual environments now, some of them can be more severe. Some of them are straightforward, fix-it tickets type cases. And so it has to be routed to the appropriate person, the right signatures have to be on there, the right follow-up needs to be on there, and then, of course, the right audit trail and who has access and who does not have access to these is pretty important. And then, online, the requester, sometimes they can't pay in full their obligation, and they need to set up a payment plan. And the means to do this and the ongoing process of reminders is a really important aspect of that interaction that we take for granted in other parts of our lives. Is becoming an absolute necessity in how courts are operating with their public in this day and age. And, this is also true when we're looking at DeKalb and their implementation, because depending on if it was the court staff or the solicitor, they might want to initiate conversation with the parties, as well as what happened in San Joaquin, to make sure that they're gathering more information. And this ended up back and forth, was initially not part of these types of cases, very linear in nature, and because of the interaction with the virtual court environment, became less linear, so they could resolve the case and really have an this access to justice and this fairness that their case is really being heard and understood becomes very important. And, at the end of this, you have to, create some documents, but when you're making decisions, what are some of those other pieces of information that you have to integrate in, or someone has to submit an upload. So for example, a citation is one of those things. And in DeKalb, that was a very important part in the decision-making process, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And this really goes into the court component model again, right? I mean, the citations would be coming in from, you know, whoever the law enforcement is using for electronic citations, presumably in that traffic court. And then they would come into the CMS, and then they've got to, obviously the CMS and the ODR system have to talk. So in DeKalb, you know, the actual image of the citation is available within the CMS, and then that negotiation is happening, if there's a negotiation, or maybe it's just straightforward, like MJ was saying, is happening through the ODR platform. But again, that connection needs to be pretty close to real time because people are taking action on these tickets.
Yeah, and once, and this is an interesting implementation with DeKalb in their design, is that once the offer has been made and once it's been accepted, then one of the requirements is to upload a proof of identification. And that makes sense, right? But they intentionally did not do it at the beginning. They intentionally did it after the offer was made and after the offer was accepted. And this is an effort to potentially, you know, remove some of that element of potential bias by looking at someone's identification. And, you know, we have been paying attention to a lot of studies in this area. And, you know, I can refer you off to some studies with online dispute resolution and how it, in some of the early studies that are out now, it can address some of the racial biases that may be out there, and people don't even know that they have them. So anyways, there's more on that we can go into, of course, but it was strategic in the design of where they put this in their workflow process. And at the end, it's, you know, a plea is filed, and this is a case in DeKalb, and it's signed by the requester and the judge. It can be, you know, the judge has to sign each and every one, or they can use a canned signature, depending on how it's set up. And judges do like having pull their canned signature in, but they want to do it obviously at the end.
Yep. And then you can see here that the plea is, again, deposited. Essentially, the finalized version is memorialized in the case management system, in the CMS there. All right, so moving through the life cycle, don't you wish your cases went this fast? Right, in an hour, knock them out. So let's go to this last step here, which is modify and monitor. All right, yep. So a couple things happen. So you come to the agreement. They're either going to get, you know, maybe they pay their case, maybe they go to probation, you know, maybe they're put on a payment plan. Whatever that outcome is, it's got to be monitored, right? Because if they fail along the way, then something else is going to happen. So we've got to keep track of that. And the CMS really should be, you know, have ticklers or triggers or whatever you want to call it to monitor those things, so that if somebody does fail to make a payment after they've agreed to a payment plan or fail to show up for probation, that should be automatically triggered within the case management system that now some other workflow needs to be initiated, right? So your CMS should be tracking that part of the process. But going back to what MJ was saying with the communications, right? This, I mean, we really do, I know that I do personally take this for granted. I mean, and most of us in this room probably receive some type of text notifications from some service or a lot of services in our life, right? Flew in yesterday, I think I got 15 texts from Delta with different changes as the storms rolled throughout the country, right? So this is what the public expects now, though. They see this from all the other service areas in their life. Why would they not expect it from what they would consider their taxpayer dollars? Right? So I think that's how we need to approach it. And this could be anything. This could be, you know, this particular example that we're showing here is a payment reminder. Hey, you have money due tomorrow, here's a link, pay it, right? Like, so they literally they can click on that link, takes them right to the payment window, and they process their payment right from there. Heck, if they want, they could, you know, double click and use their Apple Pay and be done with it, right? So removing some of those barriers to increase compliance for you all. And that's one example. This could also be a reminder that, hey, you know, we weren't able to solve this one online, but there's a hearing tomorrow. You know, don't be late for your hearing. Or if we're talking jury, maybe this is a reminder once they get there, you know, what room to go to, or that they don't need to show up for jury. So, you know, the communication tools, it's really endless. It's kind of whatever you need for your court. And I'll throw out one other big one that we've seen a lot of interest in now is a check-in tool, right? You don't want everybody, when we are starting to come back, courthouses are opening, people are starting to do in-person hearings and jury trials again. Well, do we want to fill the jury waiting room with 150 people, maybe not, right? But maybe it's better that those folks check in from their car and they wait to be told what room to come into and whether they're needed or not, right? So we're also seeing that where there's an integration with the case management system with an online check-in tool where they can scan a barcode in the parking garage and check in right from there, whether it be for jury, whether it be for a hearing or anything else at the courthouse. So another thing to think about with the online check-in, with the communication tools.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples in that space for sure. So before we open up to discussion, I would like to share and highlight some outcomes and some, comments from the court users and also from your court users, customers that are coming into your court. I'm going to show you a video. Now, this one didn't link in because it happens to be a newscast, but this is another innovative court up in Suffolk County. And really, when they were bringing their online system on, it was around November. Their court was closed to in-person hearings. And so this newscast, I thought, was a really nice way to summarize this. So I'm going to get out of, how do I get out of? Oops, okay, that worked. And let's play this. Start at the beginning and play this video.
Suffolk, a new way for drivers to resolve those traffic tickets. The county rolling out what it says is the first of its kind of the state, virtual plea bargain system. News 12's Tama Ponton has the details.
I think that's a great idea.
Well, yeah, to make it easy for you, right?
That's the reaction from some of the drivers we spoke with in Hauppauge today about Suffolk County's T-Please program. Officials with the Traffic and Parking Violations Agency say if you get a moving violation, like a parking or red light ticket, you don't have to come in person to traffic court to settle it. According to the county, here's how it works. You log on to the T-Please site, plead guilty, not guilty, have a prosecutor review your case, or pay your fine, and county officials say you never have to step foot inside of a courtroom. In a statement to News 12, Suffolk County Executive Steve Bellone saying in part, it is no secret that having to appear in person at TPVA can be a real hurdle for many drivers. The county executive going on to say, this new program provides yet another option for drivers to resolve their cases without having to take time off from work, arrange for childcare, or miss school.
If you decide to log on from wherever you are, county officials say there is a real judge and solicitor on the other side of the site, making decisions about your case using the same information that they would as if you were in court.
Most of the communication is electronic, so that means you would be getting updates about your case through email, text, or messages on the site. However, if you decide to reject a plea bargain that's offered, county officials say you will be scheduled for a trial date in person at traffic court. In Suffolk County, I'm Tama Ponton, News 12, Long Island.
Suffolk officials say more than 10,000 drivers so far have been able to fully resolve their cases through the online.
Put that out. So, I mean, we've taken it to different parts of the country, obviously, upstate California, over in the south in Georgia, as well as in Suffolk County, New York. Well, I didn't want to do that. I can go quickly through. Yeah. But, when working with Suffolk County, that was in November that was launched. And he was talking about 10,000 cases going through at that time, where that was about a month ago, that video, approximately. And there are over 15,000 cases now going through their system. So they really are handling high volume online in their virtual court environment. And as we look at some of the courts we already talked about in DeKalb, they're averaging now about 500 cases a month, and the same thing with San Joaquin. Initially we were handling high volumes as we were dealing with backlogs, and now it's kind of leveled off at around 500 cases a month for both of these courts.
And these are just some of our states that are using our CMS system at Pioneer. with some impact on their staff, right? So, one of the nice things about getting back out in front of people, but I've been able to reconnect with a lot of our customers, and I've heard repeatedly from several of them that we would have never been able to get through this pandemic and keep our court running without what we did with you guys. So that's pretty rewarding for us as a vendor. I actually talked to our deputy probate judge in Jefferson County, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, this morning. And she gave me kind of some of the details on that they were able to keep their cases running and keep closing cases, especially the important probate cases when you're dealing with a child and a parental right situation. And they were just able to do all of it from home. So pretty neat there to see some impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, we're always monitoring numbers and number of cases going through the system with surveys and data pulls and reporting. And, even before the pandemic, 40% has been a consistent number of people saying they would have not have been able to resolve their case if it was not in an online environment for them to resolve. We have to figure out how to display, because obviously those numbers are much higher now. How do we add how things went over the last year? And then we do know it saves times not only for the court, but for your public who is utilizing your courts. We know that payments are made faster when it's done online, and that interaction of the virtual court process. And then surveys are coming back very strong with recommending online, and also that their case was handled fairly. And, the survey also has a lot of open-ended comments that are coming in, like what would, thankfully this was here when the pandemic hit in cases, people with disabilities commenting, and even, senior citizens who really can't get out and being able to access the system and really access the technology as well, which has been pretty exciting. So different testimonials will give you a range of the types of users who are using online virtual court aspects as they go through the entire process, which is pretty exciting. So, yeah, we'd like to open it up for questions.
I was opening the chat, just so everybody knows I'm not, but don't see any questions on there, but happy to run a mic around the room if there's anyone in here.
Yeah. Any questions in here? And oh yeah, there are some mics up here too.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
And with some energy, Kevin Bowling.
I'm just curious, as you know, MJ, we use some of these products and find it very helpful in some case types, but I'm wondering, as you guys have gone around the country or different jurisdictions, are there any case types that you're running into where the feedback you're getting would say, don't come here with ODR, or are there any areas where it isn't working well, or are you finding the adoption rate both from the court and the public to be equally positive?
That's a great question.
Because we'd like to look at additional case types. That's the thing.
Right.
But I'm concerned about whether we would jump into areas where it might not be warranted or really achieve the same kind of positive benefits that you were just showing on that last slide.
Yeah. So that we measure all of this, and we haven't met a case type we don't like or that doesn't like the online aspect. However, there are case types that take longer to be successful. That is very true. And if you think about the logic there is that if you're implementing a voluntary process and people aren't comfortable with it yet, especially in the civil case area, where if I'm dealing with a traffic or a criminal case, the prosecutor, solicitor, law enforcement, they're one of the parties and they're initiating the case online. In some of the civil cases, you have to have both parties, or if there's multiple defendants, all have to come together. So it takes longer for those cases to start ramping up with volumes because you have more parties that have to come in and they have to get comfortable with it first. So that's what we're finding, that some take longer to ramp, but we haven't really had an area where it really hasn't been successful as far as case types. And maybe we haven't tried enough case types yet to hit that.
That could be. I'm just thinking and tying it in with the last session, we were talking about digital evidence coming in, and I'm just curious if, I know that on some of the cases we've had, we have some evidence that is handled very smoothly and effectively through an ODR platform, but I wonder if there are case types that get more complicated or may have a lot more digital evidence, if that or proves to be problematic in any way, or if your experience shows that it still works smoothly.
Well, and to an earlier point that Ryan was making is that you have to look at the whole process, right? So if you're looking at virtual court and ODR is a piece of it, how are you ODR is one component, right? And your digital evidence is another component. And if you're using the components for what they're best at, that's where you're going to have the success. If you're trying to make an ODR system digital evidence, you're not going to have the success because that's not what it's built for. So it's using the right components together and also making sure that you're leveraging from a whole case management life cycle process. You may want to add to this, Ryan.
Yeah, thinking through it, some of the case management systems have built-in, digital evidence, right? So our customers have that. So, there would be a tie in there. I kind of, when you were asking the question, I was thinking through it, and I'm kind of like, why not try more, right? So what's there to lose? Yes, it takes some effort to stand it up, but then it's up, right? So then I think people are going to start to expect it on a variety of case types, not just the quick fix, not just the traffic tickets. I think as this grows, why not try it with the more complex ones? Because I think really the only way that we're going to be able to flush out those complex ones and figure out how to get a quicker adoption rate is by doing it, right? I mean, we've got to try it. So, and even with the digital evidence, I think there's some things to be done there with the integration between the case management and the ODR for, digital evidence uploads and things like that. So I think they can be accomplished for sure.
Yeah. Oh, good questions. Thank you, Kevin. Others? Kind of winding down from a long day. Yes.
I do have a question.
Here, I can walk over to you.
These are your own documents that you're uploading into ODR for, like, say, the plea agreements that the defendants and the judges and the prosecutors are signing. You're building your own ODR with, is that right? With your program. Is that?
Yeah, but the documents can be the documents that the court uses as well. So if they're being filled in online, you can upload them. If someone's filled them out, you can fill them out online as well so that they're documents that your court is used to using. And then, go through the process of signing and, approvals and, all of that routing and process. But these aren't documents that are part of just the ODR system. They're part of the court system. Yep.
Yeah, when you said I wasn't sure if you were talking to MJ or you're talking about the court, because they're essentially the court's documents and they can be configured.
And then that original video you saw, those were pre-court. And so those are agreements that the state uses, a statewide agreement, a pre-settlement agreement that they use. And so we run that through the system. Or there are some implementations that we're doing in Ohio and a few other states where they always have like an open form for some of those mediated cases.
That answer your question?
Yeah.
And I don't think we found two states that operate exactly the same, right? So there's a lot of configuration that happens between the courts in different states, right? So, Ohio does it completely different than Michigan, than Florida, than, everywhere else, California.
Yeah, I mean, just the 4 different implementations we highlighted today, everyone was different with their forms and agreements that are part of the process. Okay, well, you guys aren't sleeping. So I see that you guys were engaged, and I really appreciate your time at the end of a day, knowing that we still have a lot more days to go through here. appreciate it. Any
Yeah, thank
closing
you.
words,
No,
Ryan?
yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I see the sun shining. It's, probably 70 something out there, so we won't keep you from. I actually have one closing question, just out of curiosity
Yeah.
with this room, MJ. How many people are using ODR, some type of ODR in their courts now? Okay, one. All right. 1, 2. Okay.
Okay.
A lot less hands than when I asked about e-filing, so that's interesting to see the trends over time, right? All right,
Yeah.
well, really appreciate the time. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and appreciate those who could join us
Remotely.
online as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.